Hello students, in our previous classes we have discussed about the collection of urine and we have covered the topic time of collection and method of collection. So in today's class we are going to discuss about the collection and transport guideline, and after that the storage of urine, and finally the preservation of urine sample. So we are going to cover these three topics in this class. The first, the collection and transport guideline. So the collection and transport should be done with the help of some containers, and previously we have seen different types of containers during the time of collection, that is single specimen collection and 24-hour specimen collection, and in that topic we have seen about some containers. So collection should be done in specific urine sample collection container, and there are some characters of this container. The first character, that the container should be clean and leak proof. So as we know, the container for urine sample collection must be of use and throw type. That means the patient must use fresh and new container for his or her urine sample collection. So first the patient should check the container for any contamination, or the container contains any dirt or not. So first he should check that, and when he found that the container is clean, then he can use that container for his or her urine collection. So that is the first criteria. Now second criteria, the container must be break resistant. That means the material which is used for that container must be of flexible, so that it can resist some types of pressure. Now third, the material of container should not interfere with the urine sample. Suppose we are using some material and that material chemically reacts with the urine sample, then what will happen? The chemical configuration of the urine sample will be changed, and finally we can get false negative or false positive results. So the material should not interfere chemically or physically with the urine sample. The fourth point, the containers should not be reused. So we have already discussed that the containers should be of use and throw variety. The patient should get fresh, clean and new container for his or her urine sample collection. So after collecting the urine sample, he or she must hand over the sample with container to the technician, and technician, after examining the urine sample, after doing all the tests, all the parameters which is prescribed, after doing all of the procedure, he must discard the containers, so that the container cannot be reused. So that is the fourth point, the container should not be reused. The fifth point, capacity of at least 50 ml for routine and at least 2 liter for 24-hour sample. So during the time of collection session, we know the time of collection may be of two types. One is single specimen collection, and second one is the 24-hour specimen collection. So for single specimen collection, we have to use at least 50 ml volume container. So this is a 50 ml volume container. So for routine examination or for single specimen collection, this type of container is used. And for 24, and there may be different types of single specimen collection container. You can see the first one is the 50 ml, the second one is the 75 ml volume container, and the third one is the 100 ml volume container. So these types of containers are used for single specimen collection, and for 24-hour urine specimen collection, the larger volume container are used. So at least 2 liter volume container should be used for this 24-hour sample collection. So where we can see the smaller one is 2 liters and the bigger one is 5 liter. So at least 2 liter volume container must be used for 24-hour urine sample collection, and 50 ml must be used for routine sample collection. And the sixth point, the amber colored containers for light sensitive analysis. Suppose the physician has prescribed one parameter which is light sensitive. So what should the patient do? The patient should collect the urine sample in a amber color container. So this is the amber color containers, and you can see this amber colored protects the entry but restricts the entry of sunlight inside these containers. So in case of any parameter which is light sensitive, this amber color container should be used. So these are the 6 characters the containers should have. Now the storage of urine. So in our previous classes we have discussed that the urine should not be stored, or the urine should be examined within 2 hours of voiding. So as soon as possible after collecting the urine, the patient should transport the urine sample to the laboratory, and within 2 hours of voiding the sample must be examined. But suppose in case the patient unable to deliver the sample within 2 hours, or the delay is expected, for some reason delay is expected, then what's to do? Then the sample can be stored in a refrigerator up to 8 hours. So its sample can be stored but up to 8 hours, and that must be in a refrigerator and at a 4 to 6 degrees centigrade temperature. So the sample can be stored up to maximum 8 hours. And again in the same type of containers, so for single specimen collection, these smaller containers, that is maybe 50 ml, 75 or 100 ml, or for 24-hour sample collection, the bigger containers. So these containers should be kept inside the refrigerator at 4 to 6 degrees centigrade up to 8 hours. And again for the light sensitive parameters, this amber color container should be used. So this is for storage purpose of the urine. Now why we should not store the urine sample? Because if we store the urine sample, some physical and some chemical characters of the urine may get changed. So what is the effect of storage of urine? So let's see about them. The first, that is the increase in pH. So if we store the urine sample for longer period, that can lead to increase in pH. Now how that happens? We know if we delay the procedure, or if we hold the urine sample for longer period, then the bacteria starts to proliferate into the urine sample, and this bacteria produces urease. So urease is an enzyme which reacts on urea and converts the urea into ammonia. This ammonia then get dissolved into the watery portion of the urine, and finally it forms ammonium hydroxide, and we know ammonium hydroxide is a base. So ultimately the urine will become alkaline, or the pH of the urine will get increased. So the first point, that is the increase in pH, and this occurs mainly due to the proliferation of the bacteria which produces the urease enzyme that ultimately leads to the formation of ammonia from urea, and then the ammonia ultimately turns into ammonium hydroxide, which causes this increase of pH. This is the first effect. Next, the second effect, that is the formation of crystals. So we know the urine sample contains various types of organic and inorganic materials, and among them it also contains calcium and phosphate inorganic elements. And if we hold the urine sample for longer period, then this calcium and phosphate can get precipitated, and it can form crystals inside the wall of the container and also in the bottom of the container. So suppose one urine sample we have to test for this parameter, calcium and phosphate, gets reduced, so we will get a false low value. So this is the second effect. Now the third effect is the loss of ketone bodies. Suppose one urine sample contains ketone bodies. We know normally ketone bodies are absent in urine, but in case of starvation or in case of diabetes mellitus or in other several cases, urine may contain ketone bodies. But if we hold the sample or if we delay the procedure for many hours, then what will happen? These ketone bodies are volatile, so these ketone bodies will evaporate, and finally the ketone bodies content of the urine will get decreased, and even we can get a false negative value. Suppose one sample contains urine ketone bodies, but we are delaying the sample for very long period, and finally we are getting a false negative report, so our diagnosis will get wrong. Now the fourth point, that is the decrease in glucose. Again the same thing. Why decrease in glucose will occur? Suppose one patient has glucose in his urine, because we know normally urine doesn't contain glucose, but suppose one patient has diabetes and his urine or her urine contains the glucose, but we are delaying the procedure. So what will happen? Again the bacteria will get proliferated, and this proliferating bacteria needs energy, so it will utilize the glucose by doing glycolysis, and the glucose content ultimately will go reduced. So we will get a false negative or so we will get a false low value, or even we can get a false negative result. So the fourth point is decrease in glucose. Now the fifth point, that is the oxidation of bilirubin to biliverdin. So again, if the physician want to test bilirubin in urine and we are delaying the procedure, then what will happen? This bilirubin will get oxidized and will converted to biliverdin. So we will get a false negative test for bilirubin. Suppose one patient patient's urine containing bilirubin, but we are delaying the procedure for so long time that it gets converted into biliverdin. So we are getting a false negative result, and ultimately the diagnosis will be false. Now the sixth point, again the oxidation of urobilinogen to urobilin. So suppose one physician wants to test this urobilinogen in urine, but we are delaying the procedure. So what will happen? The urobilinogen will be oxidized to form urobilin, and ultimately we will get a false negative result for urobilinogen. Now the seventh point, that is the bacterial proliferation. Definitely if we are delaying the procedure for very long period, the bacteria will get proliferated. And finally the disintegration of cellular elements. So this is a very vital thing, because in case of many routine examination we look for cellular elements. Cellular elements means the RBC, the WBC and the epithelial cells. So if we are delaying the procedure, the cellular elements will ultimately get disintegrated and we will get a false negative result. Suppose a physician wants to diagnose a UTI of a patient, and suppose the patient sample contains pus cell or epithelial cell, but for delay these cellular components gets disintegrated, so we will get a false negative result. So these are the 8 points. There are many more side effects, many more effects, but these are the main 8 points with which we should focus. So these are the effects of storage of urine. Now what are the preservative for urine? Suppose we have to store the urine sample, then should we use preservative or not? And in case of suppose 24-hour sample, so we in this class we already know that maximum up to 8 hours we can store the urine sample, but if we have to store the 24-hour urine sample, then we must have to store the sample with some preservative, because 24-hour sample, that means more than 8 hours. So in that case preservatives should be used. So what kind of preservatives are used, we will discuss in this case. So preservatives are used only for 24-hour urine sample, and in case of routine sample preservatives are avoided. Now why preservatives are avoided in case of routine sample? Because in case of routine urine sample we use different reagent strips, which we are going to discuss later. but these preservatives normally interferes with the reagent strip, and we will get a false negative or false positive test. That's why preservatives are normally avoided in case of routine examination. But we have to use the preservative for 24-hour urine sample, because for this 24-hour, at least is this 24-hour period, we have to store the urine sample. That's why we must use preservative. So let's discuss about different types of preservatives. So there are many types of preservatives which are routinely used, but we will discuss here about 5 preservatives which are mostly used. So first, the hydrochloric acid. So as we know, hydrochloric acid is a very strong acid. So if we add hydrochloric acid to a urine sample, actually it will prevent the proliferation of bacteria. So bacterial proliferation will not occur, and so what will happen? The ammonia containing parameters. So we can test the ammonia containing parameters, because bacteria produces ureas, and ultimately the urea content, the ammonia content, and many other nitrogenous substance content, that will be altered. So HCl can be used for nitrogen containing parameters. They are urea, ammonia, nitrogen. These are for these types of parameter we can use HCl as a preservative. And there are many other things for which HCl can be used. There are adrenaline, noradrenaline, vinyl malonic acid, and steroid. So for these parameters HCl can be used. So normally HCl, normally the concentration of HCl may be 2 normal, maybe 3 normal, or maybe 6 normal. So HCl, so HCl can be used as a preservative. That is the first, and the second one is the toluene. So toluene also can be used as a preservative. Toluene actually, for its mechanism of action, toluene actually like oil. So if we know if we add oil to a water, then what will happen? The oil will float on the surface of the water, and like that toluene. If we add toluene to a urine sample, this toluene floats on the urine sample. So it will create a physical barrier between the air and the urine sample. So what will happen? The water, so if it creates a physical barrier, then the oxygen of the air cannot enter into the urea sample, into the urine sample, and finally bacteria will not get the oxygen for the proliferation. So actually it also prevents the bacterial proliferation. So this is the mechanism of toluene. Then the third, there is boric acid. Boric acid it can act as a general preservative. That means sample for 24 hours. If we have no option for refrigeration, so boric acid can be used. So it's a general preservative, and the main thing is that if we use this preservative, the urine sample may not be stored in a refrigerator. The fourth point is the thymol. Thymol can act as an antibiotic or antibacterial or antifungal. So basically it inhibits the bacteria and fungi. And for different types of urinary electrolyte analysis, this thymol can be used. So what are those electrolytes? There may be sodium, that may be potassium, that may be chloride, bicarbonate, calcium, phosphorus. So for this type of electrolyte or these types of ionic content, this thymol can be used. And thymol also can be used for urinary urea, ammonia, urinary amino acid, creatinine, protein, reducing substances like sugar, glucose, and ketone bodies. For this purpose, thymol can be used as a preservative. And lastly, the formalin. You have in your anatomy classes, practical classes, you know that all viscera are kept inside formalin, because formalin preserves the cellular structure of tissue. So if we are looking for formed element analysis in urine sample, then this formalin can be used, because it preserves the formed element. Formed element means the RBC, the pus cell, that may be epithelial cell, or many other types of cells, formed elements. So for that, in that case or in that type of preservation, formalin can be used. it is a list, and you can see it is a very long list, and in this list we can see different types of test name and what type preservative can be used in that test. So you can pause this video here and you can see the whole chart. Suppose the first one is the suppose albumin, we are looking for urinary albumin, then it's written that 24 hour, that means we have to collect the 24 hour sample. So for urinary albumin collection we have to collect 24 hour urine sample, and preservatives only refrigeration, no preservative is needed for this urinary albumin. Now second, aldosterone. So for aldosterone 24 urine sample is collected and the preservative used boric acid. So you can pause the video and watch all these test name and all these preservatives. Thank you. Stay at home, stay and save lives. And in our next class we will going to discuss about different types of physical properties of urine, that is volume, color, odor, pH and specific gravity. Thank you.